All right. Hello, everyone. We are now live and we are streaming live on Facebook also. So if anybody's watching us there, thank you. I'm Brett Caviness. I am a realtor in the San Francisco Bay Area. And this is our series premiere of Learning from Leaders. And I'm super excited to have our guest today, Novian, with us. So if you guys are familiar with Zoom, there are a few things to know. Your video cameras are disabled right now. We're in webinar mode, but you can still send us questions. So throughout our time chatting today, we really want to hear, the questions and comments that you guys have. So throw them in the chat if you're in Zoom, or if you're watching us live in Facebook. I'm also monitoring activity there. So add your questions, your comments in Facebook as we're going, and we'll try to leave some time at the end of our conversation to get to your questions because we've got a lot to get to, and I'm super excited. So Roman, thank you so much for being here on my first episode. And I picked Roman because he's just a superstar. Roman is based in Waco, Texas with Coldwell Banker Apex Realtors. And if I'm correct, I think he was just named the #1 agent company-wide in his mid-year results.
Yeah, mid-year.
And you were recognized as the number 27 agent in all of Texas. And you're just an overall really great guy also, which is, I think most important and why I really wanted to have you here today. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man.
You want to give us an idea, how long you've been in the business, and we'll start from there.
Sure. So I've been in the business going on 8 years now. Actually, I think I did hit 8 years in April. I'm with, like you said, I'm in Waco with Coldwell Banker Apex. Been with Coldwell Banker the entire time that I've been an agent. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So today I really wanted to get to talking about balance, because I think this is a really interesting subject and in some ways can feel impossible in our business because as we know, it can definitely be a 24/7, kind of world that we live in, especially with technology and having clients communicating with us all the time. And, for those of you that don't know, so Roman's in a market, but also is at a point in his business where he could be carrying anywhere from, a few dozen listings to, 30 or more listings at one time. And he still works with buyers. He's out there all day, every day. But at least from the outside, when I'm watching, it looks like you're able to kind of keep it all together. And so I wanted to hear from you, what makes that kind of level and volume of business really work? How do you keep all those plates spinning at once?
Yeah. So, I mean, first and foremost, whenever I started doing a lot of volume, a lot of units rather, I was waking up every night dreaming that I was forgetting someone's option period. And here we don't do things like you guys do. We have option periods, so a set amount of days. If you don't get your repairs done or asked, you don't have an agreement between those two parties on the repairs, then you're SOL, you're buying a house without repairs. So I wake up every night with the same dream that I forgot one of my buyer's option periods.
Yeah.
That year it was my third year in the business, I did 115 units with no assistant. And that's when I was like, okay, I think I'm doing well enough to go ahead and get an assistant. So I did that. That took so much stress off of me. So I think one big thing is delegating tasks to others, and so that you can do what you're paid to do. And so I make my money by being in front of people, networking, and getting clients, and things like paperwork, putting dates in calendars, things like that. That should be delegated to someone else, whether it be at whatever point in your career. Maybe it's a transaction coordinator or a licensed assistant. I always recommend a licensed assistant whenever you're doing an assistant, getting an assistant, rather than getting an unlicensed assistant. It just works out a lot better. So that's one of my big things is not only using my assistant, but delegating tasks that I am not the expert in. Like marketing pieces, things like that. They all go out to other people to be done. So I'd say that's probably one of my biggest things. I don't have like this super awesome like database where I'm doing a lot.
You told me that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do any of that. My database is Facebook. I add all my clients after closing on Facebook, and that's how I kind of keep in touch with them. But I mean, as far as like doing any of that kind of stuff, I don't really do a good job at that. And one thing to know is I'm not the best at this. I'm always learning new things, and so I'm glad you started this because I'm going to be watching some of what the other agents say and seeing if I can learn anything new.
Absolutely. And when we were talking, getting ready for this call today, you had mentioned, the ways in which you do, kind of prioritize tasks and keep things in top of mind. So I'd like you to talk a little bit more on how you do function, without a CRM. How do things look like for you? Because I know for me as an agent, I think as realtors, we're all just really creating and operating our own business. And a lot of times we're kind of making it up as we go in terms of figuring it out, like you said, learning and growing. And so I always am really inspired from hearing from people like you on how do you actually make it work? How does your daily, life look like? When are you coming to the office? How are you keeping things in mind? How are you remembering to reach out to clients? What does that look like for you on a daily basis?
So I'm kind of old school in the fact that I use I just recently updated to Google Sheets from Excel.
Wow.
Um, but I put all of my clients in an Excel spreadsheet. I have these big windows in my office that we use, like the dry erase markers, to kind of put who we're working with at the time, so I can look up every day and just remember, as I'm looking through listings that hit the market every day, that kind of stuff. I'm pretty old school on that. Now that we're, in quarantine and lockdown and all of that, we've transferred that window to basically the bottom of we call it dailies. And that's basically everything that's going on, where we're at, when the option period expires, when the closing date is, inspections. It goes all the way through, and kind of talks about everything that we would need to know about a particular transaction, so that I can quickly pull it up and reference it, change things. And then my assistant can add, see changes, things like that. Typical day for me, which is kind of surprising to some people, and in a way, it kind of makes me feel a little bit, I don't know. I see everybody wakes up at like 6 a.m., goes to the gym, and then goes in the office. Well, I'm still asleep until typically between 9 and 10 a.m. I'm not a morning person, and I'm typically at the office at the earliest. If I'm doing a closing, I'll get there early, but if not, I'm typically at the office around 11. And I usually stay till about 5 or 6 p.m. every day.
And your assistant is working what hours then?
She works 9 to 5.
Okay.
So she's there doing everything. And of course, a lot of our business is just answering emails on the phone. It doesn't really require you being in a certain place.
Right.
But one thing I've learned is to just really focus on what you're good at, and then what you're not good at, like I said, delegate to others. So I'm not good at waking up in the morning. Like, I just can't do it. And if I'm up that early, I'm dead anyway. So it's like, might as well be enjoying my sleep,
Right.
and letting someone else take the reins until, I get to the office and we kind of talk and everything.
Right.
So yeah, typical day for me is in the office somewhere around 11 or so, catching up on things, going to appointments, things like that.
Yeah, that's great. And so you had mentioned to me that you were carrying, like you said, oftentimes dozens of listings at one time. You're a guy that's still out showing properties to buyers and clients. And so what I was, curious to find out is, I know that when we're working with our clients, this is obviously one of the most stressful times in their lives. This is
Right.
a big purchase or sale for them at any price point for most people. And it's very stressful. And oftentimes as agents, we're the ones that are, getting a lot of that stress, communicated to us. And so when here in the Bay Area, I would say it's common to have, a handful of clients at any one time that are active, maybe up to a handful of listings, which would probably be more than average at any one time. And, we're dealing with clients that are very stressed and all those complicated situations. So if you take that times, 10, 20, or 30, which is what you're experiencing, how do you handle that flow of client communication? How do you address it? How do you take all that stress and pressure that's coming your way?
Well, so I mean, getting to know, I don't get to know my clients as well, I feel like, as other agents do that, go out to dinner and things like that. And like, really, I see that all the time. Other agents are just kind of like really, fraternizing with their clients. I keep it on a little bit more professional level, at least until after closing. But I always stress to them that, I'm looking out for their best interest. I let them know what I'm going to be doing for them from the get-go. And then I also, in my mind, kind of categorize the different people. So you've got investors who want their house sold, and they don't need you to tell them what you're doing, every week. You're gonna, at least on a listing appointment, or whenever you're getting to know your client a little bit, you're gonna know what type of personality they have. And if they're very anal, you're gonna want to check in with them weekly.
Mhm.
So here our market's been pretty quick moving. So instead of having to update, oh, we've not had any showings, no activity or anything like that, this is what we're doing, price is good, we need to leave it alone. I typically have been just saying, hey, we've got a showing today, we've got one tomorrow. And then it's like, should be having an offer come in soon. So it hadn't been as crazy as it's been in the past. But in the past, I would just call everybody once a week. So say on like Fridays before the weekend, just update them, let them know what we're doing, let them know the activity on their house and kind of the state of the market, things like that. I think if you're checking in with your client, even if it's just a quick phone call or a text, they know that you're still alive, you're still working for them, you're not on vacation, you haven't forgot about them. I think that's really important for them to maintain, them being happy with you. So,
Right. So I think it sounds like, just kind of constant communication, and making sure that they know, what your activities are and what the activities around their property is when we're talking about listings. You had some really interesting insight in terms of how you handle the idea of open houses. And obviously it's much different right now that open houses in general are kind of on pause. But tell me about, your take on open houses in your market, and how you address, the topic when clients come to you saying, maybe that they do want open houses.
if a client does, so open houses in our market don't do as much as I've seen from my friends all over the place. Seattle, Cali, it seems like they maybe bring in more business.
Sure.
Here, it's extremely rare that a house will sell from an open house. Typically, when people are looking for a house, they're on Zillow, they're scheduling an appointment with an agent or the listing agent. They're going to see that house when it's convenient for them. Typically, you don't get in the car and drive around looking for open houses unless you're not really super serious. It's
Right.
great for new buyers agents to pick up buyers and for anybody looking to pick up buyers. But, for me, I'm kind of past that. I don't want to have to, spend my day getting ready for an open house, sitting at one for 2 hours, 3 hours. So I'd cut that out. I don't think it's a high, I don't think it gets good results. You know what I mean? So I cut everything out that I don't feel like does a good job, like
Mhm.
paper flyers in the front. I don't know if anybody's still doing those, but we still have a few agents that do those. To me, it's a waste of time. Open houses, yeah. If a client really wants an open house, then we have plenty of agents in our office. Like I said, the newer agents that are just looking to pick up buyers that can do an open house. But typically, whenever I tell them about the benefits of an open house and how it doesn't really do a lot to get a buyer, I explain to them they're open their house for basically anyone to come through. Um, they could have any kind of intentions, to leave a window open or, look for prescriptions, whatever. After I tell them that, they're typically like, well, we were kind of leaning in the direction of not wanting to do one. So this is great news.
Right.
And I'd say probably 99% of people they're in agreement with me and don't want one.
Okay. And in terms of leveraging your time, you had talked about your process when you're working with buyers, which I thought was really interesting. And I think as agents, a lot of times we forget, I forget how important this process is for people in some respects. And that, for us, we're always out showing properties and meeting with clients. And so it's just what we do. But for
Right.
a home buyer, it's a really big, important point in their life. They're probably telling their family and their friends, "I'm going out to look at homes today." This is a big step for them. And so I thought it was really interesting how you kind of took that perspective in terms of, then leveraging your time in terms of when you show properties, because you told me for the most part, you're taking weekends off. And how are you explaining that to your clients in terms of leveraging their time and yours?
So first of all, I don't think it's necessary to explain too much to a client.
Mhm.
Um, you've given them what they need, and keep the rest for yourself. And there's never a time when it comes up. So, like you said, buying a house is a big deal for a buyer. For us, it's every day. It's a cakewalk. We're doing this all the time. But for a buyer, this is a very important thing. So for them, for it being such an important thing, they're going to make time for it. I've even had people that will, look at houses during lunch hours or take, uh, half days, things like that, or just look in the evenings after they get off work. And I'm pretty successful with getting people to look at houses during the week after work, when I do have to show houses, or even during the day. I don't go around saying I don't work on weekends. It's just not something that needs to be said. I don't work weekends unless it's an out of town buyer that's the only opportunity they have.
Mhm.
But I mean, if you think about it, I kind of equate it to going to the doctor. When you call in to get an appointment with your doctor, you're not saying, hey, I can come at this time. They're going to laugh at you and tell you the doctor is not available at that time.
Right.
You're going to be fit in on his schedule. He's a professional. And I don't think there's ever been anybody that's called the doctor and said, oh, are you kidding me? I'm calling someone else. You know what I mean?
Right.
So just like a doctor, we're professionals. And if we tell them, hey, I've got this time available and this time available, which one of those works for you, they're going to pick one of those times. They're going to make it work. They're going to rearrange their schedule. So I say to agents, don't rearrange your schedule for every client you have. Accommodating, of course. But if you can just simply say, I've got this time and that time available, it's a pretty common thing now in the real estate world. I guess people are catching on to that. It works out really well.
Yeah, that's great. And what you also shared with me is how the importance for you and growing your business to be so successful in relatively short amount of time has been branding and marketing. So tell me, how that process has been for you and kind of what your goals are with every transaction in terms of branding and marketing and growing your business.
Yeah. So, I think, and most of the people that are on this, this webinar or whatever this is, Facebook Live, whatever, they're probably agents that have been in for a little while. So, but very early on, I got with a designer and designed a logo that I really love. And I think it's important to have a brand, just like anything else. If you look at Wendys or McDonald's, they've got their brand in place. You know what they're about. It's clean. It's good. I think it's just as important for us to have a good brand and image. So I would say that having a good logo and having a color scheme for your marketing, things like that, and being very consistent with it is very important. I see a lot of agents, they'll start something, they'll stop, they'll do something different. And it's like, you never know what they're doing. They're always moving brokerages, things like this. So I think that's all a part of branding too. I take every opportunity to market. So early on, when I didn't have anything to market, I was doing those open houses and marketing those. But whenever I would get a buyer that came along, I would have my photographer drive by, snap a picture of the front of the house, and then so I have a nice professional image to use, and then I'd promote that as just sold, represented a buyer in this part of town. I can help you to call me. And then, so that's on the business side. And I put that on my business page, my Facebook business page. And then on the more personal side, I add those people as friends, my buyers and sellers that are in the area. I'll add them as a friend on Facebook. And then we'll do a picture with me and them with holding the sold sign and just say, congrats to so-and-so and tag them. And so when they're tagged, their friends are seeing that they just bought a house, Roman the realtor sold it to them. And I've gotten so many clients just based off that, like, hey, you sold so-and-so house and my other friend so-and-so. And it's like, you're obviously the guy to call, so we're calling you. And that's completely free advertising right there. You don't have to boost or promote or anything.
Right. And I think what you talked about to me, which I think made total sense, is I had made the comment, we've been connected for several years. And I said, I feel like you've been getting even more funny online in the last several years. And so my question was, if that was just, what I was thinking I'm noticing, or if that's been a concerted effort, if that's something you've thought about, and you had some good insight on that and how it relates to bigger brands also.
Right. So humor has been my thing. I was the class clown in school. And so that's, I get a lot of attention just from that. But early on, I was like, do I use humor in my marketing or am I too new? And I thought I made the decision that I need to build a reputation before I start doing that, because I don't want to be known as just the silly agent who isn't really doing anything, but he makes all the jokes. Mm-hmm. So, now that I've been in the business for quite a few years, I'll post something on my business page, and it's, maybe something that is kind of spinning off a current event, making fun of, something that is, in the news, or, it could be Tiger King. It could be just, anything, basically taking what's current and popular and then putting my spin on it. And I have really good results with that. Typically when I post something like that, it's going to get a lot more organic shares. Typically people see real estate agents and it's the same thing. I sold this, I sold that, this is for sale, coming soon. And they see that thousands of times, from all these different agents. So when I put something on there, it's totally unrelated to selling a house. It's just a comment or a blurb or something like that. I think it's a lot more memorable for them to see that than, a house or a listing that I've posted.
It
And it's
seems
just
like
like with,
yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, it seems like you're being even more authentic. Obviously, I'm sure you were already, but just even bringing that out even more, which I think people really respond well to. And you had mentioned, like Wendy's again is a brand that people know of now as having kind of witty responses on Twitter and Facebook, and it really helps them stand out as kind of a
right,
relatable kind of business, which I think you're doing even more of now.
right. Yeah. I mean, Wendy's is the example that I use. Wendy's has a reputation, but then they started, uh, on their Twitter. I don't know who got control of their Twitter, but they're amazing. They're literally roasting other brands, you know what I mean? And
Right.
it's super funny, and they get thousands of shares just off stuff like that. And so their brand is being seen by, all these people, and it has nothing to do with an ad.
Right. And you'd also talked about a little bit, when you said marketing and branding has been really important to you. So the question always is how? How do you get it done? As an agent, a lot of times it just really feels like, where are we going to have the time to, do the mailers, do the posts on social media, do all of that kind of content when we're running around just trying to keep, our clients, together and appointments straight? What's the glue that keeps that going for you?
Well, and it's a good question that you asked that, because it hasn't been going as well as it was early on. Because I'm constantly going here, there, everywhere, appointments, and to stop and make a post, it takes time, and energy. And there is some level of burnout that has happened. You just kind of are like, I've been doing this for so long. I'm getting a lot of business. Are these posts that important? And I'd say, yeah, they are. So I've kind of slowed down on a lot of that stuff, on things like I sold this, I sold that. So now it's mostly just my listings, and then the witty stuff that comes, to mind every now and then. And I've noticed a little bit of a slowdown in the number of calls and things that I get from like Facebook and messages from people on Facebook. So it's something I need to ramp back up and just be doing it anyways. But one thing is finding a good designer that knows what needs to happen,
Mhm.
so they can make the artwork or make a template for you to place over a photo saying you sold a house, or just whatever. Again, delegating it to someone who is going to make it look good, and who knows how to do it and doesn't have to do trial and errors like you would have to do. I think that's really important. For me, finding the right person is very important too, because I had someone who, my small stuff was just so small it was hard for them to get to.
Mhm.
And so finding the right person for that makes a big difference, because it ended up being so much hassle for me to say, hey, is this ready yet? No, it's not. Okay, I need it by then. Getting it back and posting it, it was just kind of really tough. One reason why I kind of scaled back on that.
Right. And we've talked about, through the course of our conversation today, about all the things you can be doing and the activities, but the topic really is, balance. So, tell me a little bit more about how that's important for you. I mean, you told me that, you really feel like home life is important, and making the, committed time for that actually helps you, be a better agent. So tell me a little bit more about how you've decided to, really stick to that plan.
Yeah, so my time is super valuable, especially if you run yourself ragged, you're going to end up blowing up. You know what I mean? It's not going to work out well for you. So having the time in the evenings, or the weekends, to be able to recharge and unwind, be yourself, is really, really important in my opinion. So I have, either I'm working and I'm using my time as well as I can, doing the things that really bring me business, or I am completely relaxing, doing something that I love to do, and it's my time. There's really not much of an in between there. So that even goes for home life. So I've got someone who cleans my house. I've got someone who mows my lawn. And, I know a lot of people think, oh, you're saving money if you can do those things. Why spend money on that? But if it takes you 5 hours to get your house clean, how much, if you were to divide out your yearly income, you divide that by the number of hours you worked that year. If you're making $200 an hour, why would you ever, spend 5 hours cleaning your house? You know what I mean? It makes no sense. What you want to do is you want to pay someone 20 an hour, or whatever it may be, to get your house cleaned, and pay somebody $40 a week or every 2 weeks to mow your lawn. So I think when people get that concept, that really helps out a lot. But yeah, I mean, I just think it's super important to have your own time, and especially if you have family, they deserve your time too. At the end of the day, you're doing this to make a living, and if you're not living, then you're defeating the entire purpose of what you're doing.
Right. I think that's the most important
Yep.
piece of today, I think, to get out of this. We're not wrapping up quite yet, but I want to welcome people to add in your questions, anything that you're thinking of in terms of your concerns or challenges when it comes to leveraging your time, managing a balance in your life, personally and professionally. I want to welcome you to add those questions to Facebook or Zoom. Roman, when you talked about there's not really a gray area in either, when you're spending personal time, it's personal time. When it's business time, it's business time. But we know, especially now, our cell phones are always with us. And with the volume of clients that you have, my big question is, they have to be texting you and calling you sometimes, and things happen. A door gets left open, or the inspection report comes in with this information, and those emails are rolling in. Are you addressing those immediately as they're coming in while you're relaxing on the weekend? Or do you put those off until Monday? How do you handle the communication?
Yeah. So, I mean, typically I'm just knocking them out. I see it come in, I'll knock it out, in between conversations with friends or just whatever. Um, I mean, I used to just be constantly on my phone, even, during brunch or whatever. Now I know that they can sit there for a minute and then I can get to them. Of course, setting up systems for showings, things like that, are going to help with a lot of that kind of stuff. I mean, I noticed that things really do slow down pretty well on the weekends, as far as all that goes. Um, I think for me, knocking it out quickly just gets it off my plate. Because if it stacks up, I'll typically end up forgetting about it. And then I'm in a worse position than even just taking the 30 seconds to respond. So yeah, even if I'm not in the office, or, if I'm waking up in bed, I'm returning phone calls, emails, things like that, almost all the time. Obviously when it gets to a certain hour of the night and I just don't feel like doing it, then it'll have to happen the next day. But
does that inflow of communication, does that stress you out? Have you gotten used to it? Is it just, become normal?
yeah, the easy stuff is not a big deal, of course. And I do a lot of voice to text, so it's really easy just to quickly text someone back. I think whenever you've got and it's like every time I go on vacation, something happens where it's like this super emergency,
Right.
Buyers or sellers are freaking out. Yeah, definitely takes a toll. I think there's, as real estate agents, there's just some level of stress that we're going to constantly have and have to deal with. And so that's just one of the things that I just have to deal with. Again, sometimes I'll call my assistant, who's usually taking care of business for me when I'm out of town, on times when I'm not available. Run her down on a situation and say, "This is what we've got to do. Can you handle this?" And then she'll kind of take over, doing a lot of those things. So having a good assistant makes a very big difference. I have an assistant. I pay her extremely well, and it's because she's very valuable to me. And if she feels valued by me, then she's going to do the things that I need her to do, and she's going to be there when I need her. If you pay someone well, there's almost no way that they're going to be like, "Oh no, it's the weekend, I'm not doing that," because they're going to know that not everybody pays that well. So I think it's a really good thing to go ahead and make sure they feel valued. My assistant, she knows that business hours are 9 to 5-ish, but she also knows that she can take any day off she wants. She can leave the office late. She can come in early, rather come in late, vice versa. If we're really slammed and she needs to stay a couple more hours, she just knows what we need to get done, and then that's kind of what's expected of her. Right. But she has no cap on the amount of days that she can take off. She usually goes out of the country for 2 weeks for one trip, and then a couple other weeks here and there throughout the year. She's free to do whatever she wants. It's just kind of an honor system, and I think it gives her a lot more trust, and it makes a better relationship.
Right. So Will, thank you for your question. He's asking a little bit more in depth, which I think we all are wanting to pry more into, is how do things slow down for you on the weekends when buyers oftentimes want to see homes on the weekend? Do you have a showing agent, or do you not work with that many buyers?
So I don't work with that many buyers, and I think most of your top agents do more listings. I mean, you only have so many hours in a day, but you can typically take on a lot more listings than you can buyers. They're a lot less work. You're not driving around, showing, doing those things. So
Mhm.
I work with probably something like 70, 80% sellers, and then the rest are buyers. So I don't work with a ton of buyers. But again, when I do, I'm basically showing them during the week, and um, or saying, yeah, we can take a look at this Monday. If it's something that's coming on the market, they've got to get in and see that day. I'll go and show them. I'm not above showing people on the weekends or in the evenings, or I'll get my assistant to go open the house for them to take a look at. So
Well, I think what you had made me think of really is recognizing how important of a process this is. And, when you help clients kind of also understand that, and explain, maybe here's what we found is that maybe weekends, open house time is not the best time to see homes. We should see things right away. If it's coming on the market on Tuesday, it's probably not best for us to wait till Saturday or Sunday to see it. Maybe we could
right.
see it right away during the week and schedule a private showing. That's probably easier for everyone to schedule. Um,
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, when you said like in a good market, things don't last long. So I do definitely, that is something that I say to clients. We may not have time if something comes on the market, we've got to see it as soon as possible. So then I say, and I'm available after you guys are off work, or if you guys want to take a lunch break and go see it. So I think that's really important to throw that out there, because they're going to want to go as soon as possible when you say something like that. So that's another way of saying, I'm not showing you on the weekend. We need to take a look during the week, without actually saying that.
Right. I like that. Um, David Lenore asked us, how do you find an assistant? This is getting into the kind of nuts and bolts. And again, thank you everyone for sticking with us. Roman's so gracious to answer some questions. So how have you found success finding an assistant?
So my assistant actually worked at our office. My assistant's quite a bit older than I am. She actually kind of just threw it out there at one point. I had first had an unlicensed assistant. Loved her. She was a good friend of mine. Made things difficult because she didn't understand the process.
Mhm.
So maybe you reach out to a real estate group in your area, and you just say, is there anybody who is looking for more set hours, maybe, that or a more stable income? And you might just catch one of those kind of low producing agents who knows the process and knows what they're doing. They're just not as good as getting out there and getting new clients. And maybe it works out for them. So in my case, it was kind of that same situation. My assistant was ready to just kind of chill out. She wanted a steady income, a 9 to 5, situation, and it worked out well for her. So she really likes the process, but she doesn't really like the marketing and things like that I'm much better at than she is. So we're kind of the yin and yang.
Right. I think that's great. Let's see. I've got one more question here. So Tiffany, thank you for joining us today. Tiffany's asking, what is the best way to find a seller to list their home for a new agent? What's worked best for you? How are you finding your listings? You kind of touched on this in developing your brand and marketing, but we all see successful agents like you who are doing a great book of business right now. But take us back to the beginning. Where did it start? Where did the first few sellers come from?
Yeah. So for a new agent, I mean, you've got to really tap into your sphere of influence and the people, your friends, family, your ex coworkers. Um, if you're in a market that you've moved away from family, still focus on those referrals and things that you can do with them. But as far as getting new clients and maybe a new area, I would really focus on just networking. You've got to get out there in front of people. So use any kind of group that you're involved in to network, and then maybe farm a neighborhood where basically you're sending some sort of postcard to them, once a month or so. Once you do finally get a buyer, you want to use that to your advantage. That is a sell that you just had. So maybe that in that neighborhood, you send out a postcard that says, I recently sold this. I represent the buyer. And I don't know, on that postcard, it might say a little review about, what they thought about you. Definitely get reviews. I always, right after closing or at closing, I'll say, hey, I hope I did a good job for you guys. If not, I want to know how I can improve. But if you wouldn't mind, please write a review on, Google or whatever you want them to write that on. I think that's pretty important for building a brand and reputation.
Right.
Had a lot of But once I finally got reviews, I had a lot of people that would find me on Zillow and say, hey, you have more reviews than anybody in Waco, so we're going to go ahead and go with you. That helps out a lot. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Roman. So if anybody has any final questions here, I don't want to go over too long for anyone. Again, if you're on Facebook or on Zoom, throw in your questions in the comment area. We'd be happy to answer those. But Roman, I really appreciate it. I know you're available for other people to always reach out to you. How's the best way for them to contact you?
Yes, I mean, I really like Instagram for networking. So Roman_the_realtor on Instagram is a good way to get a hold of me, network with me, see what's going on. My page. I'd love to follow you back. You can never have too many contacts. So.
Absolutely. Well, my big takeaways, and there were so many today, but I was, writing down as fast as I could is, the first one would be, leverage others to do tasks that you're not an expert in, and do what you're really good at as an agent. And it seems like, for us, it's really that communication with people, being in front of them, with them, guiding them through the process. And so that goes to number two, communicating often with your clients, just to keep, the momentum going, make sure that they know that they're still top of mind, and important to you. And then the third was, which I think is probably most important and sometimes most difficult to do, which is set aside, your downtime and really kind of protect that and keep that to yourself.
Yep. I would say you paid attention well.
Well, Roman, I really, really appreciate all your time. I really appreciate everybody that's been watching in with us live. This is the first of many to come. So if you missed any portion of this, you can see it later on my YouTube page. So follow me, search Brett Caviness on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, Brett Caviness also. I hope you guys join us for a future event. And if you have topics or ideas, feel free to follow up with an email or questions and ideas, and we will put those to use in the future. So Roman, again, I really appreciate it. For those of you who weren't in the beginning, Roman Novian is with us from Coldwell Banker in Waco, Texas, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Can't wait to see the future episodes you have and your other guests. It's gonna be awesome.
Thank you so much, guys, everyone, for joining us. We appreciate your time. Have a great week. Bye.